In the dead of night, a massive fireball erupted above Russia's Ilski oil refinery, turning the black skies of Krasnodar into a dome of orange inferno. Ukraine had struck again, not with billion-dollar jets or hypersonic missiles, but with something far more disruptive: a fleet of kamikaze drones. The target, Ilski, is not just another industrial complex. It's one of Russia's largest privately owned oil refineries, processing over 6 million tons of crude oil annually. From this site, diesel, gasoline, and fuel oil are funneled directly to Russia's front lines in Ukraine, powering the trucks, tanks, and machinery that make war possible. But in mere moments, a low-cost Ukrainian drone undid billions in investments. Fire consumed 3 major storage tanks and critical hydrocracking units, instantly slashing Ilski's operational capacity by over 30%. The night sky glowed for miles. Emergency teams scrambled, 170 personnel mobilized, but the damage was already irreversible. It wasn't just another attack, it was a calculated assault on the lifeblood of Russia's war engine. This wasn't just about explosions. It was about economics, morale, logistics, and strategy. A single $100,000 UJ-26 Boba kamikaze drone neutralized infrastructure worth hundreds of millions. A single strike severed a major artery in the supply chain that keeps Russia's war machine moving, and the impact was immediate. Ilski's sudden disruption paralyzed fuel logistics for nearly 700 of the 1,400 tanker trucks Russia relies on daily to supply its frontline troops. With this refinery offline, fuel had to be rerouted from facilities up to 400 kilometers farther away. The cost in time, fuel, manpower, and vulnerability skyrocketed. That 400 kilometers adds more than just distance. It adds exposure to drones, to satellite surveillance, to sabotage. Every extra kilometer is an opportunity for Ukraine to strike, and every convoy becomes a high-risk operation requiring escorts, diversionary tactics, and coordination that stretches Russian logistics thin. The fallout is exponential. Russia's military tempo, its ability to move, supply, and fight, was compromised not through brute force, but through precision attrition. Ukraine doesn't need to match firepower, it only needs to bleed the beast dry. Strategically, Ukraine has mastered the art of asymmetric disruption. Rather than meet Russia tank for tank, it attacks the pressure points that sustain the entire war effort. A $100,000 drone can do the work of a $10 million missile, if used smartly. And Ukraine is using them very smartly. In 2025 alone, drone strikes have eroded nearly 15% of Russia's diesel output and up to 20% of its high-sulfur fuel oil exports. Each hit doesn't just destroy, it compounds. Each destroyed refinery, rail hub, or depot amplifies the logistical burden on the remaining network. Russia can patch one hole, but 5 more open. Ilski was not the first, and it won't be the last. The Kremlin is being forced into a reactive posture, always one step behind Ukraine's next calculated strike. These aren't isolated hits, they are strategic dominoes. The financial toll reflects this cascading pressure. The Ministry of Finance reported a 1.2 trillion ruble shortfall in energy tax revenue in just the first half of the year. That's nearly $13 billion in lost state income, money meant to fund tanks, pensions, propaganda, and basic services. And it's not just numbers. Global reinsurers watching the fireballs over southern Russia are pulling back. Risk premiums for fuel terminals and pipelines have spiked. Russian state-owned energy firms are being forced to self-insure, bearing financial risk they're ill-equipped to absorb. A single drone strike now threatens entire corporate balance sheets. Then there's the psychological side. Russia once believed its critical infrastructure was invulnerable. Now, drone strikes land hundreds of kilometers from the front lines. The buzz of a UAV isn't just a battlefield sound. It's heard in Moscow suburbs. Panic buying at gas stations, Hoarding in agricultural zones and long fuel queues are now part of everyday life. These strikes don't just burn fuel, they burn public confidence. Russia's projection of strength has begun to falter. Behind the facade, capital is fleeing. Billionaires are moving funds offshore. The ruble is weakening. Consumer prices are climbing. And investors have lost their nerve. Bond markets are in retreat. Demand for ruble-denominated government bonds is 40% below projections. Interest rates hover at 15.5%. Moscow's borrowing costs spiking. Confidence in the Kremlin's economic stewardship is crumbling. Even senior officials are acknowledging the rot. At the St. Petersburg Finance Forum, Economic Development Minister Maxim Reshetnikov admitted we may be entering stagnation. Central Bank Governor Elvira Nabiullina conceded that Russia's recent growth relied on exhausted labor reserves. This is not resilience, it's depletion. It's economic hemorrhage disguised as stoicism. Public spending is now a high-stakes triage. Does the Kremlin fund the war effort or domestic stability? The 2025 defense budget is slated to hit 13.1 trillion rubles, over 6% of GDP. That's Soviet-era spending without Soviet-era production. Meanwhile, universities are turning into recruitment centers. Engineers are being funneled into tank factories. Medical graduates are diverted to support military logistics. Civilians are being woven into the fabric of a wartime economy. And it's fraying. Sanctions continue to constrict imports of high-tech components. Russia's defense industry is leaning on black market semiconductors, salvaged electronics, and outdated machinery. Failure rates are rising. Field reports show tanks breaking down due to overheating, UAVs malfunctioning mid-flight, and armored vehicles using subpar armor plating. Ilski, therefore, wasn't just an oil depot. It was a junction, a critical node linking crude oil to diesel to artillery logistics. Taking it offline wasn't just a tactical success, it was a systemic blow, and the fallout loops back. Repair crews are pulled from frontline supply chains to patch up broken facilities. Surveillance drones must now guard oil fields instead of tracking Russian armor. Generators and backup power units are being rerouted from field hospitals to energy hubs. Every repair effort subtracts from the frontline war effort. This is the essence of strategic warfare, forcing your adversary into resource misallocation. Ukraine doesn't need to attack everywhere. It needs to force Russia to defend everywhere, and that is exactly what's happening. Meanwhile, Ukraine's targeting intelligence continues to evolve. Satellite data, intercepted comms, and real-time drone reconnaissance paint a full-spectrum picture of Russia's logistics web. Every time Ukraine hits a node, it learns more. Every blast provides telemetry, reactions, and insight. And each strike improves the next. This is 21st century warfare. It's fought in data centers, logistics hubs, oil pipelines, and credit markets. The drone is only the trigger. The real payload is systemic disruption. Ilski was a warning. A $100,000 drone sparked losses that may exceed $1 billion. Multiply that by a dozen other strikes, and you get the outline of a collapsing economic perimeter. And there are more strikes to come. Russia must now harden every node. Refineries, relay stations, pipelines, terminals, each with troops, radars, jammers, and patrols. The military burden skyrockets. The economic cost snowballs. And Ukraine? It needs only a handful of drones, a few good hits. The damage does the rest. This is the power of asymmetric warfare. The balance sheet becomes a battlefield. And in that arena, Ukraine is winning. The fuse has been lit. The oil empire is cracking. Subscribe to Militaria for more battlefield deep dives. The war isn't just on the ground, it's in the system.